you ever had someone question your honesty and end up embarrassed? When I was about 13, I had one goal that completely took over my mind. I wanted a PS3. Not a generic console, not a used one, the real thing. My dad said no every time I asked, but my uncle, who owned a small sweets shop in town, offered me something much better than a simple yes. He told me that if I worked for him throughout my 2-month summer break, he would buy me a PS3 and a few games as payment. To a kid with no expenses and a huge dream, that was the perfect deal. My uncle's shop was known for a snack called mini samosas. They were tiny, around 4 centimeters each, but unbelievably addictive. He sold them in 250-gram and 500-gram packets. Over the years, he had figured out an easy system. A 250-gram packet usually contained 28 pieces, and a 500-gram packet contained 56 pieces. The size of each samosa was consistent enough that counting them was easier than weighing them. So that became my official job all summer, counting and packing hundreds of mini samosas every day. We also had a loose section where customers could buy any weight they wanted. Those had to be measured on the scale. Around this time, the government had started airing constant consumer awareness announcements about being alert and making sure you weren't being misled. Those messages were everywhere, on TV, on the radio, at the bus stop, and one regular customer of ours seemed to take them very seriously. It was an unbearably hot afternoon. Power cuts were normal during Indian summers, and that day the entire neighborhood was out of electricity. The fans were still. The air felt heavy. My uncle sat behind the counter fanning himself with an old newspaper while I restocked shelves and tried to ignore the heat. That's when Mr. Karen walked in. He was a regular customer, usually calm, but today he already looked upset. He glanced at the dead ceiling fans, sighed loudly, and grabbed a sealed 500-gram packet of mini samosas off the display. Without even greeting us, he held up the packet and asked sharply, "How many samosas are in this?" I answered automatically, "That's 500 grams, sir." He immediately raised his voice. I didn't ask the weight, I asked the number. "Tell me how many pieces are in here." 56, I said calmly. I packed it myself. Of course I knew the number, but he didn't like that answer at all. "How do you know?" he demanded. "You didn't count them. You people think customers don't pay attention. You're trying to cheat me." He then pointed at the loose section and said, "Pack me exactly 500 grams from those, and don't try anything." I glanced at my uncle. He was sweating and clearly exhausted. He didn't want any argument in that heat, so he gave me the slow nod that meant just do it the way he wants. So I smiled politely and said, "Certainly, sir." I took an empty bag, grabbed a scoop of loose mini samosas, and began placing them onto the scale carefully, one at a time, counting each piece aloud, just like he wanted. When the scale reached slightly over 500 grams, I paused. I removed one samosa and the weight dipped below 500. Then, keeping steady eye contact with him, I gently crushed the removed samosa and sprinkled the crumbs into the bag until the scale displayed exactly 500 grams. He watched the entire process without reacting to the crushed samosa. Instead, he straightened up, folded his arms, and asked smugly, "So, how many pieces now?" 48, I said confidently. His entire expression changed in an instant. Here's the thing. A few months earlier, my uncle's longtime chef had retired, and the new chef made the mini samosas with slightly more filling. They looked identical on the outside, but each piece weighed a couple of grams more. It wasn't enough to change the pricing, and since the chef supplied multiple shops, my uncle didn't complain. But those extra grams added up when someone insisted on buying strictly by weight instead of by count. Mr. Karen stared at his bag of 48 pieces, then looked at the neatly sealed pre-packed bag with the full 56 pieces. You could practically see the moment he realized he'd created his own problem. He cleared his throat and asked awkwardly, "Can I buy the pre-packed one instead?" My uncle, who had been silent through the entire exchange, finally spoke. "No, my nephew prepared that specially for you, exactly the way you requested, so that is the one you will take." There was nothing left for Mr. Karen to argue. He paid for his 48-piece bag and walked out quietly, without another complaint. After that day, he became one of the calmest and most polite customers we had. He never questioned the packets again. I finished my summer job, earned my PS3, and spent years enjoying it. And funny enough, when the console finally stopped working years later, this entire memory came back to me, reminding me of the summer when counting mini samosas taught me more than I realized at the time.